Peak Wealth Management proudly presents Finding True Wealth with certified financial planner Nick Hopwood and accredited investment fiduciary Jim Pilat. Nick and Jim believe by making simple, good financial decisions, you can retire with confidence. And now, let's turn it over to your hosts, Nick and Jim.
Welcome everyone to the Retire with Confidence podcast. My name is Nick Hopwood.
I'm Jim Pilat.
And I'm Preston Gee.
Preston is joining the podcast today. He's one of our Social Security experts. So today's topic is the Social Security Analyzer. And before we get into that though, I want to share that I just finished my second move within 1 year. Okay, I promised. I did that in 2008, 2009, moved twice in a year. And I promised myself I'd never do that again. And I lied. I did it again. We just got into our new place in downtown Plymouth. So we are all in on Plymouth, got the office here that we moved here in 2014. And now our residence in 2022. So all in on Plymouth. So if you want to do a happy hour in downtown Plymouth, I can walk up to happy hour.
So was it better the second time around, moving twice in a year, or was it just as bad as the first time?
The first time was so bad. So I don't know, man. I don't think it was as bad. Okay. So maybe we have less stuff, which I don't know how that's possible, but maybe we're just a little older and a little wiser and approach it a little better. Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah.
So Preston, you have a lot of moving ahead of you, that's for sure, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's get into Social Security. I think you should definitely consider watching this podcast on YouTube, because this is going to be a visual. In fact, I'm going to share the screen now. We'll talk you through it, but I do think it would be much better if you were watching it on YouTube for the visual. So what we've got here is a new tool for us, which helps us illustrate the consequences of when you take Social Security. And we're going to go through a test case. Mark and Mary married. It's a husband and wife. They're married, obviously. And we've got the normal retirement age. We call it the PIA, the primary insurance amount, for Mark at $23.45 a month and Mary at $9.82 a month. So Jim, and Mark's about a year and a half older. Okay. So looking right at that, what are you thinking out of the gate?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing you notice is that Mark's got a much bigger value. So we need to try to figure out how to make sure we collect as much off of that as we can. I think it's also worth noting in the illustration that we have Mark's lifespan is set to 82 years old, whereas Mary's is 92. So we're having a variable there in how long they live, which makes a big impact.
I had the video, the Zoom window covering that. Thank you for pointing that out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So usually, and we can choose any age we want, right? So Preston, what's the average life expectancy these days?
I think it's about 85 or so.
Yeah. So we can change it to 85 for both or play with the numbers. But what's interesting here is this illustrates how valuable Social Security is. For Mark and Mary, the cumulative benefits are over $1.3 million with the assumptions that we've made here today. Over $5,000 a month, nearly $5,500 a month with our primary plan. So, people think of Social Security as a monthly amount, $2,300 a month. Well, it turns out it's worth, a lot of money over your entire life. So one thing that we also want to be aware of is how much we would collect based on how long we live. And that's one of the unknowns. I always say, if you tell me when you're going to die, I can tell you when to elect Social Security. Mm-hmm. But look at this. If it's age 82 versus age 72 or 92. I mean, Jim, we're talking about over $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you kind of hit on it earlier, but you're right. When you just look at it as a monthly amount, or even thinking of it as just the difference in it, right? Like, well, if I collect at 65 instead of 67, right, it's only $200 a month or something like that, right? But what this is illustrating is that, I mean, most people have a long life of collecting Social Security, right? They live well, into their 80s, which, I mean, you're looking at 20 years or so worth of Social Security benefit. The numbers really do add up.
And I more and more so think of Social Security as a hedge for longevity risk. So if you do live a long, long time, right, you're going to get a lot more money out of Social Security, and so that can go into your decision of taking it early or delaying. So all of these numbers here are based on what we call our primary strategy, and so our step-by-step strategy is down here. Mary would begin benefits based on her own earnings record for 1,058 in 2028 at age 67. Okay, so at age 67 is her normal retirement age, and she's going to elect on her own record. Mark begins on his own record at age 70, so he's going to delay as long as possible. It's also worth noting that there's no incentive to wait beyond age 70.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mary switches from her own record. See how it says her earnings record to spousal benefits, and she would step up from 1058 to 1321, and she does that at 68 and a half. So really, she's only taking her own benefits for a year and a half, and then she upgrades to Mark. Now, the reason why she has to wait until 68 and a half is because she can't collect on Mark's earnings record until Mark begins collecting as well. So April 2030 for Mark, April 2030 is when she switches over. So this is not the scenario that gives you the absolute most cumulative benefit. It's the strategy that seems to be optimized based on our life expectancy of what we think can be optimal. Okay. So the thing I like about this is that, as using this as an example, is it illustrates that Mark is going to delay as long as possible. So he gets his max, but also Mary, when Mark dies, so in 2042, Mary's going to switch over to Mark's benefits. So by having Mark delay as long as possible, not only is he getting the largest monthly benefit, but he's protecting Mary as well. Jim.
Yeah, that's funny. I was going to use that exact word. He's really protecting her by doing it that way, right? And letting his benefit grow to be as much as it can. The other thing that I think is worth noting on that is, I mean, it's highlighting a strategy in itself right there, where that a lot of people I think overlook, and that even maybe a married couple knows that the spousal benefit will be bigger than their own, earnings record itself, but they don't claim on their personal record and allow until they can collect on the spousal. So that in itself right here is a nice little strategy where you can start collecting on one person's benefit and then jumping to a higher benefit at a later time.
Let me illustrate one more point here. So remember, this number here is about 2.1 million if they follow the primary strategy and live to age 92. Well, what if, Mark is 62? He's 62 right now. Okay. And he says, I just can't wait any longer. I need to take it now. So they both take it early. That number drops, this cumulative number drops to 1.55 from, 2.3 down to 1.55 if they both live. And this number was 1.3 and it's now 1.0. So taking it early certainly can have consequences. Let's switch over to this Analyze tab. I like this one because it's going to show you right now, in today's days, in the early years, there's no benefits. And if you follow the primary strategy, now you start here at age 68, 69, and 70. And then by age 71, you have both people with full years and that's around 56,000. And then that increases with inflation at 1.5%. So it's the slow ramp up here, right? It's good to illustrate. And then here, when Mark passes away, now Mary loses her own Social Security and steps up to Mark. And then also it continues increasing at 1.5% until she passes away. So I like looking at that on the Analyze tab. Okay, now on this Compare tab, what's interesting is we can compare the primary strategy, or what I like to think of as the optimized strategy, to taking it early. So if our normal life expectancy is 82 versus 92, and the green is our primary optimized strategy, and the red is taking it early, you can see there's the 1.3 to the 1.0 if you live to 82. And if you live to 92, here it's 2.1 to 1.55. So that's pretty interesting. And then we have this break-even point. So this chart, if you're looking at Social Security with blinders on, you're always thinking, well, what's my break-even age? There's a lot more that goes into it. But Preston, walk us through this chart here with the red line being taking it early over here at 62, and the green line showing the primary optimized where we're having some delay.
Right. So the red line, like you mentioned, that's when you take the Social Security early. So what that line is showing is your cumulative benefit that you've been receiving throughout the years. And you can see it steadily increases. The green line, however, is if you delay. So you can see in the early years it's flat and that you're not receiving any income, of course. And then it begins increasing steadily as well. But its slope is much faster than the red line because you've delayed and you're receiving a higher number now. And then, as you can see, the break-even number there is about age 79. And after that point, it's better to take the delayed amount.
And we can see the same thing, Jim, in this grid where at 62, under the green primary optimized strategy, we're taking no income. And in the red, we start taking income right away.
Right. Yeah, and I think if you go to the last column too, the difference column, it's interesting to see that in the early strategy, how much you could have collected, right, before you even got one dime by delaying. And you think, 157,000 and collected before I even take anything, I'd be crazy to pass that up, right? We get a lot of people that talk like that and say, I got to collect it now while it's there. But it just, when you see the numbers on paper, yeah, you dig a little bit of hole, you dig a hole, right? Even a couple of years beyond that until you start collecting both Social Securities. And then you see, you start making up that ground pretty quick. And if there's a reasonable chance for longevity in the family, it really makes a strong case to take that delay.
Let's go to the strategy list here. So primary is what we've been working with, mostly comparing to early. It's a fairly simple comparison. But other strategies would be waiting to full retirement age for each, or delaying all the way for each. So you can see there are detailed steps based on which strategy we're looking at taking. And we can say right here in this grid, how much we would receive if we don't live very long, if we have normal life expectancy or long life expectancy. And so I like this because it maps it out, and you can kind of say, okay, I'm going to take it this age, she's going to take it that age, she's going to switch to my earnings record, and everything's here on one page. We can also take it one step further and say, well, what if my goal is, total cumulative benefits? What if my goal is to protect my spouse? What if my goal is to maximize mine or maximize hers? So some of them are fairly straightforward. I want to see the total cumulative benefits and survivor benefits. That's something that I'm interested in looking at for each client before we make our recommendation. And so, one other point, Jim, what if Mr. Mark here, he says, I really like this optimized strategy, but I just don't know if I can make it to 70. I have portfolio that I can rely on and draw down, but I might not be able to make it to 70. How would it look if I made it till say age 68 and a half?
Yeah, I think it's valuable to be able to do those different kind of scenarios, and we do have the ability through the program to do almost like through our e-money plan, right? What if scenarios, right? We can maybe design some what if scenarios through this the Social Security Analyzer program, where we can to model out what does it look like if we wait not all the way till 70, but we wait a little bit past our full retirement age. How does the break-even analysis look on that? Because I think that's one of the bigger things to consider when taking is just because you're eligible doesn't mean you should take it, right? And if you're in a good position cash flow wise, maybe it makes it a lot easier to continue to delay and come up with that optimum strategy.
Absolutely. Hey, tying it all together, guys, I think this little image here that we have on the screen really sums it up with pensions, 401k, IRA, savings accounts, brokerage, whatever. If we're thinking about those portfolios, those assets, and how to meet our living needs, meet our expense needs in retirement, right? We want to have Social Security optimization kind of married to our withdrawal optimization. So we talk a lot with people about what tax bracket you'll be in retirement, and Roth conversions and taxation of Social Security and getting that 12% tax bracket and such like that. But this image, this graphic kind of sums all that up into get more. Okay. So Jim, kind of tying it all together here to get more.
Yeah. You really just can't look at Social Security on its own, right? Because we need to take into account, like the picture showing us, what do we have do we have pensions? What are they? Do we have 401ks, IRAs, personal savings that we can live on? Does that help us delay, Social Security so that we can really make sure that we're optimizing the withdrawals? So we really want to tie it all together to show what it all looks like, big picture.
Well said. We want to, ultimately see if living on this, allowing Social Security to be worth more and guaranteed that guaranteed roll up to help us get more. So I think this is a great image we wanted to share. One more reason to follow the podcast on YouTube. So we kind of went through a simple case with Mark and Mary. They're both married and both living. But what about people who are single? What about people who are divorced? What about widows and widowers? The beautiful thing is with this tool, it can help us recommend the optimized strategy for people in all of those different scenarios. So one of the things that I find very troubling is that we'll talk with people who are widowed or widowers, and they don't understand that they can take it as early as 60, and they don't understand that they have the optionality of taking one and letting the other roll up until age 70, which can be a massive amount of extra income over those 10 years between 60 and 70, and then getting the max at 70. So we can illustrate how that looks. And for those of you who are considering taking Social Security in the next couple of years, this can really help educate you and help you understand what the consequences of waiting are, or of taking it early looks like. And so if you're a client of ours and you'd like this done for you, please call us and let's get it done. As you come into the office, we'll have this for you by default, but if you want to see it right away, give us a call. If you are looking for an advisor or looking for a second opinion and Social Security is one of your questions, we'd love to speak with you, and you can visit us at peakwm.com, where you can schedule online. I think that'll do it, guys. Thank you for another successful podcast edition.
Bye.
Take care.
You've been listening to Certified Financial Planner Nick Hopwood and accredited investment fiduciary Jim Pilat on the Finding True Wealth podcast, sponsored by Peak Wealth Management. You can learn more about Peak Wealth Management by visiting peakwm.com or follow on Twitter at nhopwood1.